Hallelujah. We made it to week 0 of the 2025 college football season. No, it's not week 1. All the big games are not going to be happening yet. But if you're like me, you'll take all you can get, and it's acceptable. I'm going to watch these games, including Iowa State, Kansas State. I'm going to pick that one here in just a little bit. But before we get into that, first of all, this is college football, y'all. My name's Brandon Taylor. I really appreciate you watching here on YouTube or listening to this in audio podcast format. Really do appreciate it. It is at Brandon T CFB on TikTok, X, all those platforms. But enough about all that. Let's get into some college football. I'm getting really excited for the season. It's almost here. It's practically is here. If we want to be technical, we'll never have another Saturday without college football for like the foreseeable future, because I don't want to think about the future without college football. So I could sit here and say, oh, we're going to have football every Saturday pretty much until January. We'll have football every weekend until February. But I don't want to say that. I just want to say till the foreseeable future. We're going to take this 1 week at a time. That's what I intend on doing. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. But right now we need to go back a few days. And if you do not live under a rock, then you know about this Michigan sign stealing scandal, okay? This thing was Connor Stallions getting the signs from opponents. There was this whole ordeal that happened a couple years ago. And just to explain a little bit about what happened, if you don't remember, there was some scandal there. And I remember when this was all coming out, we joked about it, honestly, being down here in the southeastern United States. So anytime we can make fun of a team like Michigan, we do. But that's beside the point. So Connor Stallions, it was this guy that is like an ex-military professional at like sign decoding, sign interpretation, and things like that. Okay. This is like, he literally is a professional at those things. He, for whatever reason, noticed that teams were using these signs and apparently never changed them. Every week, a team, and if you've ever been to a college football game, you'll know there is several coaches on the field that their only job literally out there, it seems to be that it's giving these signs, and they do these signals, and there are coaches that hold up actual signs with logos and brand names and certain things on there, and that's to indicate what play that is next, because college football, as you know, works on this no huddle, everything's quick, speedy tempo offenses and things like that. But this works for the defense as well, obviously. They're not huddling up. They're looking to the sidelines, and that's how they get in their play. Connor Stallions decided, we could gain an advantage here. If we knew, and if it's pretty basic, honestly. If you know what the other team is about to do, we know what to call. We know what to do against them. Now, you still have to have the players that can execute, the players that can, do their jobs correctly. So it's not just like you know what the other team's going to do, you know what play they're about to call, you're going to automatically stop it, and you're going to win by 1,000,000 points. That's not the case. But what Connor Stallions was doing was he was taking this many steps further. He would go so far as he and his assistants would go to go to the games of other teams that were playing future Michigan opponents. And it went from like, going to the games, actually getting tickets, sitting in the stands, and there was some filming that went on, and obviously some notes. And again, this guy's a professional, okay? Alleged professional. But also, maybe one of the wildest things that I remember was he actually got, Connor Stallions, that is, too many pronouns, pal. He actually got onto the sidelines of Eastern Michigan, looked like a coach. Honestly, he looked like a coach or some kind of staff member there on the sidelines, and there's a photo, I think it's a screenshot of the ESPN broadcast that captured him there. He was wearing these Ray-Bans that everybody noticed, that looks a little fishy there. Pretty sure he had a camera on there. They have the Ray-Bans that have the camera built in, and he was probably filming and gathering more data there on that team. And I know we joked about that as well. We joked about a lot of this. Okay, it was fun. Whenever something silly like this happens, I know Ohio State fans were, and they still are livid about this. I'll get to that in just a moment. But all that went on. Michigan ended up winning the national title. Now, I will go ahead and say this. I'm not going to take sides on this. Like, I will make jokes. I will do all that. But I'll play devil's advocate. I want to be neutral in things like this. Like, I don't want to say a bunch of buzzwords, and I don't want to, like, be a shock jock here and try to make you, the listener, mad. Like, I just want to be as neutral as I can on this, okay? So, I believe Michigan had a good enough team in 2023 to win the national title, and they did. And I don't know, honestly, regardless of which side you're on, I think it is a fact that we do not know 100% that had this not happened, had all the things that Connor Stallions did to gather all this information, all this intel, so that they would be able to know what signs that the other opposing teams are making. We don't know if that actually made a difference. We'll never know. But I personally think that Michigan, the football team under Jim Harbaugh there, they had a good enough program that year to win that title. And you may disagree with me, and that's fine. But that was their year. But you feel like it is tainted. Ohio State fans are really mad at this. You've got people that, obviously, they're Michigan people that are defending what the NCAA came out with. They came out on Friday, August 15th, their sanctions. It's not much. Now, I don't want to always do comparisons on things, but I have a comparison here that I'll get to in a moment. But let's just go ahead before we get into the reaction by opposing fans, opposing conferences of rival teams and such. So, and I actually have it right here for you people on YouTube to look at. And for you people listening in audio format, I'll just read them off and I'll tell you exactly what you need to know. So, here are the prescribed penalties as it's worded here. It's a quote. The prescribed penalties for the parties who contested their violations in this case are as follows: 4 years of probation. And the financial penalties, a $50,000 fine plus 10% of the budget for the football program, a fine equivalent to the anticipated loss of all postseason competition revenue sharing associated with the 2025 and 2026 football seasons, and a fine equivalent to the cost of 10% of the scholarships awarded in Michigan's football program for the 2025-2026 academic year. So that is a bunch of gibberish. This is estimated at about $35 million in losses. In other words, this isn't, it's not like Michigan is going to have to pay this. Nobody is going to be actually paying this. It's just their cut is going to be taken away. They're not going to get their cut. So basically, they're not going to get $35 million through, college football playoff sharing, and the share of like conference revenue, things like that. So that's it kind of goes into all those things. Different pots, right, end up adding up to this $35 million. Furthermore, right here, a 25% reduction in football official visits during the 25-26 season, a 14-week prohibition on recruiting communications in the football program during the probation period. All that not really making a big difference. For the coaches, Connor Stallions, an 8-year show cause order restricted him from all athletically related activities during the show cause period. Jim Harbaugh, a 10-year show cause order restricting him from all athletically related activities during the show cause period. And that begins on August 7th, 2028, because he already had a 4-year show cause from a previous case. So we're talking about near 2040 before Jim Harbaugh can coach in the NCAA in college football again. But I'm pretty sure he's done with that. I don't think he's going to finish his career out in the NFL. I think he's done all he can do in college, or all he wanted to do in college. He jumped ship. I think he's fine just where he's at. No problems there. But this is funny. Sharon Moore, 2-year show cause order. So Michigan self-imposed a 2-game suspension. So basically they picked 2 easy games, 2 of the lesser opponents that Michigan's going to face in this next season, and decided that he's going to have to sit those 2 games out. Well, the panel at the NCAA that determined all this, that came up with all this mumbo jumbo here, they decided, you know what? We should add 1 more game, a suspension of 1 more game to be added to that for a total of 3. So, okay, all right. Not this year, though. The first game of the 2026-2027 season. And that, like, what's the point? Honestly, what's the point of that? It is pretty funny. And also, he's not prohibited from engaging in coaching or other athletically related activities during the show cause period. Apart from that 3-game suspension. So, nothing else for him. He's going to go on just fine. Okay. That's a lot to unpack there. And I've seen a lot of opinions, a lot of different viewpoints, whether that's from like rivals like Ohio State. They're livid right now. They're really mad. They thought that the NCAA, man, this is not fair. This is biased towards a program like that. They should have got their national title taken away. They should have had to vacate all their wins and all those things. And then you've got like SEC homers that are also really mad because, that Michigan, that Big Ten, my light just fell. That's interesting. I need to hit quit. I need to stop hitting my desk. That's a good indication of that. But anyway, so yeah, SEC homers are mad. You got people in the Big Ten that are defending this, and I mean, I guess they should, but I don't think it's that simple. I don't think it's that cut and dry. Like, I'm going to compare this to something. And I wanted to compare this to several different allegations, several different cases that the NCAA has brought up in the past, let's say 10 to 15 years. But I thought something that happened 10 years ago is not going to really apply to now. So instead, I pulled this Tennessee case up, and this is from a couple years ago as well. Actually, a little bit further back. This is something that happened back over the Jeremy Pruitt administration. If you remember correctly, Tennessee, the direct payment issue, this was like right before the NIL thing really kicked off, right? Or right before Tennessee, the state of Tennessee came out with their NIL law, all those, political, governmental things. Direct payments to players and families of players. And there were a lot of, I remember the memes and the jokes about Chick-fil-A bags full of cash, things like that. It was all fun. Like I said, you can, if you're not a fan of these teams, you can have a little bit of fun with this, and you will have a little bit of fun with this. That's how social media, that's how the internet works. Okay. We all have to get a laugh. We all got to make memes and enjoy the memes. So anyway, Tennessee had over 200 individual violations. They got probation, an $8 million fine. They actually had an actual fine, $8 million fine, recruiting limitations, scholarship limits. They had to forfeit wins. Like I said just a moment ago, that is something that Michigan did not have to do. 6-year show calls with Jeremy Pruitt, tons of other sanctions. This list is huge. If you go to the NCAA's website and look up this case, you'll see that this list is massive. I'm not going to get my light back. Oh, well. So, but the NCAA did not pursue postseason ban. And if you noticed, I didn't say anything about a postseason ban with Michigan. That's interesting, because the NCAA has been really adamant in the past about giving postseason bans, bowl bans, even when a team, self-imposes a bowl ban. Sometimes the NCAA would come around and add to that. This has went on for years, all the way back to SMU back in the 80s when they got the death penalty. But just like it was a whole different world then, it was a whole different world 10 years ago, and it's a completely different world now. What the penalty that they got, that $35 million loss, the NCAA says is like the equivalent of having a postseason ban. Okay. The wording that you did not see in that text right there, but it was in another quote somewhere else in that document. It was a quote from the NCAA saying that, yes, a multi-year postseason ban was an acceptable punishment to fit the crime here. However, they decided against that and to instead punish them financially, the $35 million estimated loss for the postseason, instead of just banning them altogether. And we're talking about multi-year. 2-3 years, probably, maybe. It correlates to this Tennessee thing, because Tennessee got put through the shredder here. They don't have to have a postseason ban. Yeah, they're on probation. It could always get worse. I mean, I'm not saying that a postseason ban is completely out of the question, but just these two cases here kind of tell you, or kind of give you some inkling of sort of how the whole NCAA hierarchy works and who is really at power here. But also, Tennessee's NIL law supposedly overrides NCAA rulings. So the Tennessee, and you may have remembered this, you Tennessee fans especially, your attorney general threatened litigation, threatened the NCAA if they did impose a postseason ban. And that right there set a precedent. The NCAA does not have power over local governments. And we saw that when all the states decided that NIL was going to be a thing. Okay. And same thing with, all these other things that have came up, all these house settlements and things like that, just going right over the NCAA, straight to the government, law, and right here, this is a biggie. And I knew at the time that this was a big thing. But what this says isn't necessarily that, okay, the government, whether that be state government or federal government, if they were ever to get into this, and there's been some executive orders, some things that have came up. I don't see the federal government really, maybe they need to, but for right now, the state laws are the king of this whole college athletics world. We'll just have to see if the federal government decides they're going to get into it at some point. And I honestly don't know if that's the best thing. That's for another day, though. In my mind, what all this comes down to, you've got, like I said, the governments, but you also have the TV networks. And I have been pushing this point across for at least a couple of years now. You've got millions and millions of dollars. You've got billions of dollars. You've got conference realignment, conference expansion, playoff expansion, all these things that are fueled by ESPN, for example, who own the rights to the playoff. Imagine that. More games equals more sponsorship opportunities. More sponsorship opportunities mean more money, essentially, right? More eyeballs to the TV. And look, hey, is more football bad? If you're just a casual viewer, then more football is never a bad thing. And I say, well, Brandon, you just said at the beginning of this podcast that, you know, it's week 0, but you're going to watch the games and you're going to take all that you can get. That is true. But I also love the sport, and I love college athletics as a whole, not just football. And I want it to be healthy, and I want it to thrive, and I want it to be able to be sustained into the future. That way, future generations can continue to have the opportunities that they have now, that they've always had. And that goes from football to baseball, women's basketball, men's basketball, all the way down to golf, tennis, volleyball, and all the way on down the line. That's important to me. But the TV networks have power because money is power. It's like a monopoly. You know, I remember back in, I don't know when this kind of stopped, but one of the penalties that the NCAA would dish out would be TV bans. A team could not be shown on TV for one whole season, like a blackout. Of course, back in those days, it's possible that your team was only on TV maybe a couple times a year. You had to go to more games back in those days. You didn't have every single game broadcasted that can be accessed from any device anywhere in the world like it is now. But that was a big thing back then. And there is no way that that's even that's not even in the discussion. Just like that went the way of the dodo bird, the postseason ban, unless in really extremely serious situations, it will never happen again. I'm calling it. There will never be a postseason ban again. The NCAA will do like they did with Michigan. They'll force this loss of revenue, basically just blocking the postseason revenue. That's not going to hurt Michigan. I saw people on the socials say, well, man, I'd pay $35 million for a national title. That's their words, not mine. That just tells you how this environment is continuing to change. And when we think it has evolved, and when we think like there's some stagnation, it's plateaued, we continue to be surprised. And honestly, is it really a surprise? The whole Michigan thing is just wild, but not surprising to me. This just like with coaches' contracts, just like with NIL and players getting paid millions of dollars, the TV networks are at fault. I remember making a video several months ago. It may have been towards the beginning of the year about this, where I talked about the TV networks are at fault here. Like they are, it's nobody but them. They are they're the reason that the NIL thing is out of whack. They're the reason the coaches' contracts continue to rise and rise and rise. More money is getting pushed into the sport, pushed into these conferences, pushed into these programs. And you think more money's good, but more money, more problems. You know what they say. So let's turn the page on that. We talked way too long on that fiasco there. But what I want to do here, let's get into Farmageddon here. Week 0, really the only game in the slate of this tiny slate is that Iowa State-Kansas State game. Iowa State ranked 22, Kansas State ranked 17. This game obviously is taking place in Dublin, Ireland, all the way across the pond. It's going to be a noon Eastern kickoff on ESPN. I'm going to pick it real quick. So, Kansas State is currently favored by 3 points, and I'm going to go ahead and throw this out there. I'm going to take Iowa State. So, I'm going to go against the spread here and give me Iowa State plus 3. Man. See, it's just weird when you're playing like in Ireland. I can understand if they were playing at Kansas State or playing at Iowa State. You know, you might expect this game to go differently. They're all the way across the world. it's just different. It's hard. I think that has a lot to do with this. I think it's going to be a really close game, like a 1-point game. Give me 35, 34. 35-34. Final score. Iowa State wins in Dublin, Ireland. That's what I'm going with. I already picked I picked the team. I picked Iowa State, but I literally just came up with the score right there. You heard it here first, folks. So, what I want to get to here before I get to the final thing of the show here, I want to talk about just 4 games that we're going to highlight. And we're going to add to this list, but I want to go ahead and put these 4 games on here. And we have plenty of time between now, today, and this podcast and when these games start. But I've got Texas and Ohio State in week 1 as the first huge game to look out for. And this is going to be one we're going to highlight next week. We're also going to highlight LSU at Clemson, which is a week 1 matchup. We're going to highlight that one. This Texas-Ohio State game, I just keep talking about it. It's going to be a phenomenal game. Talking about big noon kickoff up there in Columbus, Ohio. Can't wait for it. And then, will Brian Kelly start this season off with a cool seat? Because right now we'll get to the hot seat calculator here in just a moment. But if you remember, Brian Kelly is cold. His seat's cold as ice, and a lot of people disagreed with me on that. His seat could move immediately up to mild if he loses this game. Clemson's going to be tough. Clemson is not going to go down easy. That's going to be in Death Valley. It's funny, Death Valley, going to Death Valley. That's how often do you see that? I'm not picking these games yet. I just want to highlight these. Also, a couple others I want to put on the watch list is Alabama at Georgia in week 5. Going to be a phenomenal matchup. I've went back and forth on who I think is going to win. I picked Georgia, then I think, well, Alabama. That's something I think by week 5 we'll be able to see. Is Ty Simpson fitting in well in that Alabama offense? How's Georgia's offense? All things I think we'll find out by the time we get there. And let's see, the 4th game we're going to add to the list to watch. Penn State at Ohio State in week 10. We got a lot of time. A lot of things that can happen before we get to that game. But always a great matchup, Penn State and Ohio State, regardless of where the game is played at. So add those to your watch list. We're going to talk about Texas and Ohio State and LSU at Clemson next week. We're going to put a little bit extra focus on those teams as we get closer and closer to week 1. And we'll have plenty of time to get to those other games. We'll add some more. As the year goes on. And at the end of the season, I would really like to make a list of the best games. And we'll see if the games that we picked were actually good games. So the final thing I want to get into for the podcast today is I want to look at the coach hot seat gauge. I made this just a few weeks ago. I had a video on it. And had some mixed opinions on this. Everything from agreeing with me on certain things to "you don't know ball, son." The typical phrase that people say when they have no other comment. So it's the "you don't know ball." Okay. So if anybody ever tells you you don't know ball, just shrug that off. If they can't come up with anything else to say, anything better to say to you in response, then they don't need to waste your time. Anyway, I almost got on a soapbox there, didn't I? So as we take a look at this, and I've already have it up here for YouTube, but I'll explain it for you audio listeners. The only coach that is on that seat is on fire is Hugh Freeze. And also, I'll kind of explain this a little bit better. There's 4 possible temperatures for a coach's seat: cold as ice, mild, moderately warm, and on fire. I really want to preface this, and I want to say this at the beginning. Mild is a long way away from on fire. I have to explain that. You'll know in just a moment why. Hugh Freeze's seat is on fire. I've already explained this. I think he's got to win 8 games. I think he does not need to lose a game that he shouldn't. I think there needs to be consistency week to week. Jackson Arnold, I really don't know. I've seen the same videos that you've seen from practices of Hugh Freeze getting pretty darn mad at his offense. I just don't know. But I think he's got to win 8 games, maybe even more than that, man, to be able to save his job. And as we move on down to the moderately warm list here, these 5 coaches, I really could have went harder on them. And maybe I'll adjust this before we get to week 1, because this is the preseason hot seat calculator, and this is going to change during the season. We're going to have fun with this year. So we got Sam Pittman there at moderately warm. And honestly, he's definitely a candidate for on fire. Because I don't think Arkansas is going to be good. But I'm talking about right here at this very moment. Now, 2 games into the season, his seat could be on fire. We're just talking about going into week 1. This is where I believe these coaches stand. But I could move Sam Pittman to on fire. Definitely could. I don't think they're going to be a good team this year. I think he's going to struggle again. I love the dude. I think he's going to retire. I don't think they're going to fire him. I think they're going to allow him to retire. That way he goes out with dignity. I would expect them to do that. So we got Billy Napier as well, and I just don't see his seat being as much on fire, and I think part of that is, yes, he's got to win. Last year, I knew in my mind, and I felt like the only one in this country, the only one in this world, with, for that matter, that thought they're not going to fire him. They're not going to fire Billy Napier. I don't care how bad of a season he's got. They're going to give him 1 more year. Well, we've got to that year. He didn't do all that bad last year. He won some big games. This year, I think he's going to win some big games too if DJ Lagway is healthy. Because this is a team that can jump, that can hit that over. They can win. They can win 9 games. Maybe a dark horse in the SEC. Maybe. If Lagway's healthy. And for goodness sakes, Billy Napier's job depends on that. I still like him at moderately warm. I do not think I would move him to on fire. So now we got Stoops over there at Kentucky. And, I think, and I've read some Kentucky fans, some comments on the socials. I think they like the guy. But I think they're ready for something else. He's been there for a long time. He's had some ups and downs in his tenure there at Kentucky, but I think they're ready for something else. They haven't had all that great of a team. Yes, they won a couple games last season. They beat Ole Miss. They caught Ole Miss off guard last season. They beat them, okay? I think Kentucky fans are ready to move on. Honestly, he could be on fire as well. So right now, if I was to change this right now this second, I would keep Hugh Freeze where he is. I'd move Sam Pittman right beside Hugh Freeze, and I would move Stoops right beside him. But next is Brent Venables there at Oklahoma, and I asked this question on TikTok. I wanted to know, just for the Oklahoma fans, how do they feel about Brent Venables? Because I really don't know. He has not been there that long. They really didn't fit into the SEC well. They came in like right beside Texas. Yeah, they strolled into the SEC together. But here's Texas, winning all these games and being an elite program. And then you've got Oklahoma struggling pretty bad. That could have changed this year. Before I asked that question, though, I had already read words like win or be fired. Oklahoma fans seem to agree with that. And they do not want to fit into this. They don't want to be in the SEC, and they don't want to be losers in the SEC. They want to make a statement, right? All these other teams have been in the conference for a while. They could have a bad season. It's not a big deal. You make a bad first impression if you enter the SEC due to the conference expansion and you suck it up, then that feels terrible. He's still at moderately warm. This year, they could be a great football team, but it's going to be easier for his seat to get warmer than it will be cooler. Now, moving on to Clark Lee there, his seat is also moderately warm, just for the fact that, he's at Vanderbilt. If anything, he's got more pressure this year than he had last year because of that success. They beat Alabama. Everybody saw that. You've got players coming back. Moderately warm. I think that's a good place for him. So now we move on down to mild, and this is where the controversy happens. As you see right there, if you're watching this, I've got Shane Beamer, and who's that right beside him? Kalen DeBoer. People thought that was wild that I would put a first-year or second-year head coach at mild. They were also shocked. The South Carolina fans came in droves to tell me how wrong I was about putting Shane Beamer at mild. These two coaches, kind of similar. Similar reasons why their seat is mild. Again, I'll preface this by saying a mild seat is a long way from being a seat that's on fire. DeBoer is there because the pressure of Alabama. They missed the playoffs last year. They had hopes. People, for some reason, thought that whoever took the job from Nick Saban would automatically be able to be successful and that nothing would change. Real people that actually put thought into this thought, well, I don't think so. Like, he may come in here and he may inherit Nick Saban's team, Nick Saban's program. But at the end of the day, you're not Nick Saban. Just because you have Nick Saban's stuff does not mean you're going to have the same success as Nick Saban, because Nick Saban was Nick Saban. His coaching style, his way of doing things, everything revolving around him was unique to him. You put somebody else like Kalen DeBoer in his same position, you can plug him in the middle of the season. That doesn't mean they're going to be just as successful as they were. He's going to be fine. I think Alabama is a playoff team. I think they're going to win a lot of games. I think Ty Simpson's going to end up doing just fine. He's going to be good. Honestly, the further he gets away from Saban's program, the further that all the Saban stuff gets cycled out and it's fully DeBoer's team, DeBoer's program, I think that's when everything will be just A-okay with DeBoer. Now, moving on to Shane Beamer, man, South Carolina fans got hot at me for this. I like Shane Beamer, but South Carolina was not. They were not in the playoff picture until they started winning games last year. They put themselves there. That is respectable. Okay? They were right there with Alabama and Ole Miss. If anything, a lot of people thought that they were above those two teams. They had some bigger wins. They played themselves into the situation. They've got Lenore Sellers, really insanely great quarterback. It's going to put up some numbers this season. All right, he's going to do some good things. They're going to have a good football team. They have some challenges that they have to overcome, but there's no reason that they couldn't be in that same picture again. It's the reason his seat is mild because of that extra pressure to exceed, at least have the equivalent or exceed what you did last season. Now, So a lot of the South Carolina fans that had told me off on social media, they said, like, no, Beamer's our guy. We love that guy. No, his seat's not mild. It's far from mild. Okay. Far from mild. What is that? Cold as ice is not far from mild. It is literally like next to mild. The wording's got to be right. Okay. Get it right. Get it right. Pay attention. Okay. Shane Beamer's your guy. But I know how fans are. If South Carolina wins five or six games this season, are you all going to feel the same way? They're not going to. This is going to be an 8, 9, maybe 10 win football team, possibly, if everything goes right. Beamer, if anything, his seat goes down to cold as ice. But will you all feel the same if they don't do so well? Will you agree with me? Or will you be calling for him to be fired? This is why it's always tough. That's why when I asked about Brent Venables, I got thoughtful answers. I got really educated answers from Oklahoma fans. When they saw me, when the South Carolina fans saw me put Shane Beamer at mild temperature, it was like all emotion. It was no logic, just emotion. No, I understand that because I'm a fan of a team as well. I'm a fan of teams as well, so I can understand that. But let's just take it easy on me, okay? And as you see right there at the bottom, cold as ice, you've got Kirby Smart, obviously. No doubt his seat's cold as ice. I mean, he's like Saban 2, okay? And all those other coaches, like Mike Elko, Steve Sarkisian, no doubt in my mind, Steve Sarkisian is, he is on the same level as Kirby. Nothing they can do, will make their seat warm. I just don't see how that's possible. Like you got Kiffin there, you got Heupel there. Obviously, you've got here's another tough one. Jeff Lebby. So you probably wondered why I have Jeff Lebby at cold as ice and have Kalen DeBoer at mild. Kalen DeBoer had a pretty good season going into his second year. Jeff Lebby won 2 games going into his second year. It's simple as this. The expectations are different at these two programs. That's all it is. State could win 5 games this upcoming season, and that will be a success or a step in the right direction. If Alabama wins 8 games, that seat's going to be warmer for Kalen DeBoer. Also, Brian Kelly there at cold as ice. LSU fans thought Brian Kelly should have been at least mild. And I think the reason that they said that was it comes down to Brian Kelly, I guess his coaching, bringing a football team down. That's how LSU fans view him. I don't think a lot of people like him. LSU's got a great football team this season. This is like the litmus test. If he hadn't had a litmus test already, he's going to have it this year. If LSU falls short, it's going to be on him, and that seat at LSU can go from cold as ice to moderately warm, just like that. We've seen it many times before down there in Baton Rouge. So, again, this list here, hot seat gauge, it's going to move. It's going to be adjusted as the season goes on. Some coaches will stay exactly where they are. Some coaches will move. Some coaches will not be on this list this time next season. I could go so far as to say that there may be some coaches that we have to completely take off of here before the season's even over. I don't know. Who's going to go down first in the SEC? Somebody will. There's going to be some coaching turnover this season. Who? Your guess is as good as mine. Well, that's going to just about do it for the podcast today. We're going to really get into week 0 on Wednesday. And on Friday, we're going to really look into some more, really looking ahead to week 1, honestly. Like, see, here in college football, y'all, when you're going into week 0, you know, it's like teams that have the cupcake game the first week and they have a really tough game in week 2. Like, they're going to go into the media and the coach is going to say, yeah, man, we're just focused week at a time. You know, they talk to the players in the press conferences. Oh, we're focused on game number 1. But really, you know that they are barely focused on that team. They're worried about the big guys they got to play in week 2. And that's kind of how I am. We're really going to look forward, kind of look over week 0 into week 1. Go ahead and get an early start this week. That way, we're not cramming everything into week 1 game week. So that's how that's going to go. We're going to give some predictions of the season on Wednesday. Stay tuned for that. Anyway, appreciate all of you listening, watching. Thank you so much. Subscribe, like, all those good things. Follow me on at Brandon T CFB if you want to see more. Let me know, comment, all those good things. Let me know what team you're a fan of, and just some comments, any constructive criticisms, and if I could learn to talk, you know, that would be a good start. That would be a criticism I would give myself. Anyway. That being said, again, it's college football, y'all. My name's Brandon Taylor. Thank you so much. We'll see you in the next episode. Peace.